Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah and this is my N.E.W.T.S results. So my N.E.W.T.S results did come in. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I did the N.E.W.T.S readathon for August. And if you want to know more about N.E.W.T.S readathon, click on my video that's titled N.E.W.T.S readathon TBR and then check out BookRoast channel. She is the one that created this whole N.E.W.T.S readathon and the OWLS readathons. And she is going to be doing more of these magical readathons. So if you're interested in participating, please go check out her channel and look at all the information she has. I'm not going to go into all the details with the criteria that I needed to meet for this video, otherwise it's going to be like an hour long. So I'm just going to dive right in. So the classes that I took were Transfiguration, Charms, Muggle Studies, and History of Magic. I read a total of nine books this month. I have never read that many books in my entire life in 1 month. I am so proud of myself. I really felt like I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. The classes that I got an O in, which O is for outstanding, meaning that I read 3 books for that class, are Transfiguration and Charms. Then I did get an E, which is exceeds expectation, and that means that I read 2 books, and that was for History of Magic. And then I got an A, which is acceptable, meaning I read 1 book, and that was for Muggle Studies. So I'm going to dive right in with Transfiguration. Transfiguration is probably one of my favorite subjects in Hogwarts. I'm a huge fan of Minerva McGonagall, so I just had to take this class. So the first book that I read had to have a gray cover, and that was Knights in Rodanthe by Nicholas Sparks. This book was good. It had a typical Nicholas Sparks ending, which if you're familiar with his books or his movies, then you know what I'm talking about. It's about Adrian and Paul. Adrian and Paul are 2 people that are divorced and going through some major life changes in their life. Adrian is watching her friends in, and Paul is the only person that has a room booked at the inn. Paul is a doctor who has made some life choices that he's not proud of. He's on the path of trying to make right some of the wrongs that he did in his life. So Adrian and Paul end up together and falling in love. Like I said, it has a typical Nicholas Sparks ending. The romance was great. I mean, it was fine. It was good. It was fluffy, but it was only like 3 or 4 days. So, I mean, yeah, it was great, but it's kind of hard to get invested in a relationship that only lasts 3 or 4 days. So, I mean, I thought it was sweet. I just wish that he would have taken a little bit more time for them to actually be together and for me to get invested in the relationship. So this really was not my favorite book. Definitely not my favorite Nicholas Sparks book. The second book that I read I loved was Brené Brown's Daring Greatly. If you can't tell by all the tabs, I loved this book. So Brené Brown has a TED Talks that is really famous. It is about vulnerability, and that's kind of her mission. She is a researcher. It mainly focuses on vulnerability and shame, and that's what this book is about. I think that this book is great for parenting, for teaching, for any kind of leadership role, or anybody that is wanting to break down barriers that are holding you back from things that you want to achieve. This is definitely a book, like if you have a girl boss book list, this is a book that you want to have on it. Another big plus is Brené Brown is a Harry Potter fan, and she has some references in this book, which you can't go wrong with me if you put a Harry Potter reference in a book. So one of the quotes that she took from Harry Potter and put it into the book was, "Only when we are brave enough to explore darkness will we discover the infinite power." I think that's a beautiful quote. I actually think that that kind of sums up where she's leading with vulnerability. In this book, she's trying to explain that vulnerability is so important for us in order to achieve the things that we want. Vulnerability is like a superpower that we have. And shame is something that destroys relationships and is very destructive. And she kind of points out ways that we don't see how we implement shame in our life and towards other people. I just feel like if you want something to change in your life, if you're not where you want to be, or you want to improve in life and have better relationships, be a better leader, I suggest this book. And if you're interested in learning more about Brené Brown in this subject, then check out her TED Talks video on vulnerability. The third book that I read, I was kind of nervous about because there was a lot of mixed reviews about it, and that was Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So I am now a Holly Black fan. This book was different than a lot of books that I've read. This book is about Jude, and she is a mortal living in a fairy kingdom with her sisters. Jude is not your typical protagonist. She is selfish, she has a cruel streak, and she seeks power within this kingdom. But she does have a warrior spirit that you kind of cling on to, and you end up rooting for her even though she's not the perfect good character. There were actually a few surprises that I did not see coming in the end of this book. I can't wait for the second installment in the series, and that is The Wicked Prince, coming out in January. I think that Holly Black did such a fantastic job in creating this entire kingdom and giving details on this very kingdom. I highly suggest this book. I flew through it. I was so impressed with it. So on to Charms. So Charms is another one of my favorite classes. I just love the idea of being able to do spells. I think that that's one of the biggest parts of being a wizard for me, is being able to do spells. So I was so excited to take this class. So the first book that I read for this class was, I didn't actually read it, I listened to it on Audible, and that was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So I initially was going to do Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, but me and my son started listening to the Sorcerer's Stone on our way to school. So we decided to start listening to it on Audible, and we loved it. I highly suggest listening to Harry Potter series on Audible because the narrator is just so good. All the different voices that he did was so entertaining. I highly suggest it. And obviously, I don't have to give a review on this book because I loved it. I mean, it's Harry Potter. You can't not love Harry Potter. So the second book that I read was Something in the Water by Catherine Stedman. So, this book is about Erin and Mark. Erin is a documentary filmmaker and her husband is an investment banker. They just got married and they go on this honeymoon. So on the honeymoon, they discover something that changes the whole path of their life and has some major consequences. And her career actually plays a big role in this book, and it just kind of takes an interesting turn with how it ties into the whole plot of the story. Each page in this book really sucks you in deeper. That's what I loved about it. Some of the endings I predicted a little bit, but I didn't predict the entire thing. It did have some shocking twists and some things that really made you question the whole integrity of certain characters. The only issue I had with this book is I felt like it had a lot of loose endings. The ending just had left a lot of questions for me, and I really don't like when that happens in a book, especially if it's not going to be a series, and I doubt this is going to be a series. But I do recommend the book. I just wasn't a fan of like the last chapter ending of it, but I loved the story and I loved the plot. It's more of a suspenseful, I wouldn't say thriller, but it's kind of bordering onto a thriller, so I highly enjoyed it, and that's not usually the genre that I read. So the third book that I read for Charms was Unexpected by Christine Caine. So Christine Caine is a leader in women's ministry. She founded Propel, which is a foundation that helps women become leaders in ministry, and then she founded A21, which is an organization that helps victims of human trafficking and helps prevent it all over the world. So she's a pretty amazing person. This book has so much advice for how to get through the unexpected things that happen in our life, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they are just unexpected and throw us off of the path that we thought we were supposed to go on. She really talks about how faith is so important in propelling us forward in our life and how it invigorates us and keeps us going and helps us get through those unexpected moments that happen. I highly recommend this book if you are interested in Christian books, and sometimes Christian books can be a difficult genre to get interested in because some of them can be a little dry. This one is not dry. She provides so many real life stories from women that give good examples of how they have gotten through moments in their life that have been really difficult and things that they didn't know if they could get past. So for History of Magic, I read Tales of Beetle and Bard by J.K. Rowling. So this book has commentary by Albus Dumbledore and translated by Hermione Granger. It's like the Grimm's Brothers fairy tales, but of the wizarding world. It has dark elements to it, and it has a moral to the story. It's a bunch of little different stories. It's a very short read, but it is so entertaining. I highly recommend this book. The second book that I read was 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it has 4 agreements that help change the perspective and the way that you approach life and how you react to certain situations. So the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Some of the key points are: forgiveness is the key to self-love, love will give you inner peace, and we only have today to be alive because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. I thought this book was so impactful on how I wanted to live my life, how I feel like I can get past wanting to please everybody and that perfectionist in me that wants to make everybody happy, because it's just not possible. I feel like this is such a good book for anybody that struggles with other people's judgments and judging other people. I feel like even after the message was given, he just kept going. So that was the only thing, as I kind of skimmed over some parts that just kept going on and on. But for the most part, I thought this was a great book. So for my last subject, for Muggle Studies, I read Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. And I loved this book. So for me, it is not the story that made the book, it was the characters. I didn't really, when I read the back of the book or the sleeve of the book, I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna like this book. It's kind of a weird plot. It's about Aza and Daisy, who are best friends, and they end up finding Aza's old long-lost friend, Davis. His father is a billionaire that has fled or gotten lost or what have you, and they want the reward money that comes with it because he has committed some sort of crime. So the story is just kind of out there, but the characters were so fantastic. Daisy got on my nerves a little bit. I felt like she had a little cruel streak in her, but Aza was fantastic. And it did explain why Aza was the way that she was in a great way. It is about anxiety and OCD, so if you get triggered by that subject, don't read this book, but I feel like John Green did a fantastic job in portraying how anxiety really affects people. I suffer from anxiety. I really connected with Aza so much on such a deep level. I cried in this book. I just thought it told her story so well. So the quotes that I thought really were amazing. True terror isn't being scared, it's not having a choice in the matter. That is so beautifully put. The next quote is, it's getting sucked into a whirlpool that shrinks and shrinks and shrinks your world until you're just spinning without moving, stuck inside a prison cell that is exactly the size of you, until eventually you realize that you're not actually in a prison cell. You are the prison cell. That's exactly how anxiety feels like me. It feels like I am imprisoned in my own self and I can't get out. So this book was amazing. I highly recommend it if you suffer from anxiety, if you want to learn more about it, or if you just want to have a book with amazing characters with so much depth, this is the book for you. So that was my N.E.W.T.S readathon. That was the results that I got. Like I said, I am so proud of the results that I got. I could not be happier. I really pushed through, and I had college classes start this month, so I feel like I did a fantastic job. So that is the end of my video, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. I will see you next time. Bye.